So when I was driving around this week, I heard this interview that really kind of captivated me because it's a book this guy Roger Angel wrote, and I'm just so excited about this book that I actually pre-ordered it because I definitely want to read this book. And it's a strange story. Roger Angel, he used to be a professional baseball player. He's actually in the Hall of Fame. And then he turned writer, and he wrote for The New Yorker. And now, at 93, he's coming out with a new book, and the book is called This Old Man. So, I take it, do you remember that lullaby, This Old Man? Okay, apparently only this side. I don't know, it's hard to work with. And this is a part that has me fascinated. So, at 93, he's lost a lot. And when you hit your 90s, you're going to be losing a lot. And over his life, he's lost, his daughter died, his oldest daughter died. After almost 50 years of marriage, he lost his wife. And, you know, for a guy who was a baseball player, he looks at his hands and he writes about what arthritis has done to his hands. But it's not a book of woes. It's not complaining or woe is me. He does it where, despite the fact that the older he gets, he loses more and more and more, he's happy and humorous and hopeful about it all. That, to me, is absolutely amazing. Because, I'm 52, and it seems just like moments ago I was celebrating my 30th birthday. And in a blink of an eye, I'll be a 53-year-old man. And, I worry that, because this is going to be a shock, I'm a little grumpy. No, I'm not kidding. I don't want to end up being this old, bitter man. And I hate to say it, it does seem to go one of two ways. Either you're bitter and angry about all your losses, or you're like Roger, where you've lost everything, but you're so hopeful and happy. I want to end up that way. So even though it's not a spiritual book, it's more of a memoir, I'm going to turn it into one. I'm going to read it just and pray that despite loss after loss after loss, I'll be the one who's fine with it all and still happy and hopeful. And I mentioned I want to be like that, but also I'm mentioning this for this reason. The readings today, it deals with this, that a lot of things will pass away. A lot of things we have, they will simply pass away. And we don't have to be angry or bitter about it. We can be hopeful. And specifically, these readings are what's called, it's called in Greek, this sounds, it's called eschatology. It's a study of things that last or don't last things. The study of things that remain and the study of things that pass away. So it's called apocalyptic or ecclesiology. Not ecclesiology. Eschatology. To know those things that are connected to God, they'll last. Everything else, it's going to pass away. And a lot of times, that kind of literature frightens people because you'll get I hate to say it, when it comes to eschatology, I think fundamentalist Christians have ruined it because, a lot of fundamentalist Christians, you'll hear about the second coming, and it's always filled with anger and, fear, which to me is the very opposite of how Catholics view it. And we're the ones who wrote it. Do you know what I mean? That whole series called the Left Behind series that theologically has no part of Scripture. It's all made up. That whole Left Behind series, I think if you read it, it's a mortal sin. It's just awful stuff. It's awful. Who needs help being hateful? Or I love the bumper sticker. I disagree with it theologically, but I think it's funny. The bumper sticker that says, "Christ is coming, look busy." I just think that's funny. And here's the odd part. Did you know, you can Google this. Year after year after year, somebody comes and they say, they know when the end is. It was actually supposed to happen, I think, last Thursday, according to some Mormon woman. I think she's wrong. But every year, somebody, and here's the amazing part. In the United States, this is just shocking. Year after year, some ding-dong says that they know when the end of the world is. And here's the odd part. By predicting the end of the world, you actually get more followers and a lot more money. Like Pat Robertson several times has predicted the end of the world, and I'm pretty sure he's been wrong. But now he's a bazillionaire. I was like, I should do that to my parishioners, but I just don't think people would fall for it. You get more money and more followers. But the opposite of that is our view, where we don't see eschatology as something that should result in anger or bitterness. Quite the opposite. Not pessimism, but hope. It should really be, as ironic as it says, we should be like the 93-year-old man who can watch his hands turn arthritic and loss after loss and still remain happy and hopeful. Because you know what's important. You know what will last and what was never meant to. So it is a little strange because in apocalyptic literature, you have all this, earthquakes and everything's going to fall apart. There's a whole lot of shaking going on. But that's okay. Some things just were never meant to last, like my hair. And if it passes away, it's okay. It's not something important that is connected to God. And so, our view is a lot different. That those things that last, you just have to make sure you're connected to the one thing that lasts forever, and that is God. Everything else, let it pass away. And so, the first reading is Daniel. And Daniel, it's kind of interesting. It's apocalyptic literature where the people are getting persecuted. So, it's kind of funny. The angel Gabriel comes to Daniel and says, you have to know the future so you can guide your people through this. And it's kind of funny because Daniel doesn't strike me as incredibly brave because the angel gives him visions, and he basically throws up and passes out. And Gabriel has to wake him up and says, come on, man up. That's not exactly what he said. But, yeah, the thing about it is a little scary because what does the angel show him is there's going to be one tyrant after another. One empire will rise, one tyrant will rise, one after another after another. But they won't last forever. For a short time, they'll look incredibly powerful, but ISIS, I think they're dangerous. Don't get me wrong, I think they're dangerous and vicious, but ISIS will not last forever. It is not connected to the one thing that does last. And so, yes, politics will pass away, the temple will be shaken and fall apart, but that's all right. We don't really belong to a temple. We belong to the temple of the Holy Spirit. That will always stay. And he gives the vision to the people, or to Daniel, so that he can strengthen the people to look for the one thing that does last. And then he has this view of the things that last. And he sees the people. It's this view of heaven, in case you missed it, where they're in these white robes, katoons in Greek, and they're burning as bright as the sun. They're like the stars. They shine. The wise shine because they have the presence of God burning in them. Anything that's not connected to the God, thou pass away and let it. It was meant to pass away. But those who are connected to God, they will shine forever. It's kind of like, I know that sounds kind of strange, but it kind of reminds me of this near-death. I used to be heavily into studying near-death experiences. And once I was talking about one with a friend of mine, and his dad was there. His dad was an older man from Ireland. And, you get the typical, float above your body through this tunnel. Then there's this great light, and the light says it's the light of the world. And they say you've never felt more love in your life. And then in the light, there are people burning as bright as the sun in the light. Anyhow, so I was telling this to a friend of mine, and his dad, who's from County Armagh in Ireland, is kind of shocked. And he said, that happened to me when I was a young man in Ireland. There's this accident, and I just thought it was a dream. But I went through the tunnel. There's this great light, and there's lights inside the light that were people. And to be honest, he thought it was a dream, but he too said, I've never felt such love. And the guy was getting kind of to the end of his journey. And it became really not a sign of fear, but a sign of hope. We can let certain things pass away. Now, this is just changing the story because I think this is funny. So the guy was close to dying and went to anoint him. And this sounds awful. I shouldn't tell you the story, but now I'm committed. So he's there, and the Irish guy says to his wife, he says, well, once I pass away, I'm sure you're going to try and marry. That's his last words. I mean, that's a strange thing to say to your wife. So anyhow, at the funeral, she's telling people, she says, his last words were, I love you. And like, technically, that's not what he said. But I think married people have their own language, I guess. I don't know. But I think being able to know what lasts and what was not meant to last, that's what the wise do. Or just another quick story. One of my top 100 favorite saints is this guy named Malachi from Ireland. I don't know why the Irish are always so holy. But he had visions of the future, and God told him to write it down. They're connected to every reign of the Pope. And this is the amazing part. For about 600 to 800 years, all his visions have turned out to be true. A really good track record. He just describes the reign of each pope briefly. They don't make much sense looking forward at him, but once a pope is elected and you can see the time, they do make sense. And Pope Francis, he's actually the last one Pope Malachi writes about, but it says he'll destroy the city built on the 7 hills. That what he's going to do is destroy the corruption in Rome. So, according to Malachi, Francis will change the church a lot, and I say let it happen. Some corruptions are meant to pass away. Let them change. And the wise, in the book of Daniel, they know it's connected to God and meant to last. And the unwise think they get to hold on to it forever. Same thing in the gospel. The gospel is apocalyptic. It deals with things that last versus don't last. And when it comes to the second coming, the day of the Son of Man is the day of judgment. And so the apostles ask him, when will this happen? Now you have to understand, if you look at the Bible, every time somebody asks Jesus a question, Jesus doesn't answer their question. He answers what you should have been asking. And so he doesn't really answer it, but he says, the sun will be darkened, the moon will not give its light, and the stars will fall away, and the powers of heaven will be shaken. That's actually Old Testament language. And I'm just going to decode some of the symbols. The sun symbolizes political authority, that on the day of the Son of Man, all political authority will no longer exist. The moon symbolizes time. That was how the Jews kept track of time. They worked off a lunar calendar, so it's a little bit different than ours. But the moon symbolizes time. There will be no more time. Stars is how people navigated. The stars will fall, they'll be useless. It means a whole new place. So where's a place where there is no more political authorities, there is no more religious authorities, there is no more time or place? That's heaven. Does that make sense? I lost you on that? It's like the lullaby, This Old Man. So he doesn't ask the question they were asking. He asks the question they should have been asking. That's going to be the time of judgment. And the gate, like when he mentions the gate, it's at the gate of the city where all judgments were made. And so this city is the New Jerusalem. And even, this sounds kind all that stuff means something. I'm not going to go through it all. But the other one is the coming again, the second coming, because there are two ways to interpret that. Like, no offense, more the fundamentalist Christians see the second coming as something dreadful, and Christ is coming back with a bad attitude. And they look at it like, there's Jesus on the clouds over Cuna. He's headed this way. Like he's out there. That's actually a very modern way of looking at it. Catholics would have a different way for this reason. When it says the coming of Christ, if you look in the Old Testament, or the coming of the Son of Man, he's coming on clouds to the Ancient One. The Ancient One is God the Father. He's not coming here, he's going there. Does that make sense? It's the other direction. So he's coming to the Ancient One of Days, and he will send out his angels to gather up all of us, and to appear before him. So the direction is the other way. We'd say the first coming of Christ, which we celebrate at Christmas, but we also celebrated the first coming of Christ today in Connor Bow. That Christ will come to him and make his dwelling in Connor Bow. Christ comes in the Word of God. Christ comes among us in the Eucharist. That's where you find the first coming of Christ. The second will be really when you die, when we go that way and appear before Christ, before the gates of the city. Does that make sense? And even like the Daniel one, think about, we are acting out these symbols today. The Daniel one where it says, those in heaven, it says this in the book of Revelation too, are in these white robes. After Cameron Bow is baptized, we dress him in a white cloth, and that symbolizes he's putting on the garments for heaven. Heaven, the white cloth is a prayer shawl, but it's also, I'm going to get too detailed here, but it's also what you'd wear at a Jewish wedding. And heaven is pictured as this wedding feast. And by the way, I just like this. What he's wearing right now on his finger, he's wearing, is that the wedding finger? No, that's the right hand. He's wearing his grandfather's ring. Isn't that kind of neat? So, because, he's getting ready for the great wedding feast of heaven. And it also says in Daniel, in the book of Revelation, that they burn as bright as the sun because the presence of Christ is alive in them. At his baptism, he gets this candle, and the candle symbolizes him. The flame in the candle symbolizes him burning with the presence of God. So the point being is that, hopefully he's already that's his future. He has the same vision that Daniel gave. Bad things will happen, there'll be loss, there'll be tyrants, even in his lifetime. But if he's wise, he doesn't have to conform to the tyrants. That's what the angel was trying to tell Daniel. Don't worry, there's going to be a tyrant. You don't have to conform. Just conform yourself to the light. Become one with the light. Those things will pass away. And so, like the old man, Roger Engel, I don't want to be bitter because things have shaken apart and fallen apart, and they're never really meant to last. We can be happy and hopeful because they're connected to the one thing that lasts forever. We only have to conform ourselves to the light. Yes, even the structure of religion and politics will fade away, but the light will remain. So, even as he said to ancient Daniel, conform yourself to the light. We have nothing to fear.